What's up guys, Cloudie here, checking in from the America server, and in this video we're gonna be looking at Siegfried, the Techno Magic Raid, which finally I managed to get around to after running out of all my Reforged tickets, so I cannot do Gargoria anymore, or there is no point really. Now, in the video we're gonna be looking at Siegfried's abilities and skills first, then I'm gonna showcase one of my auto raids on stage 5, and then we're gonna be looking at my gears, perks, and also what other characters you might be using to clear this raid. So let's get to it, see what he's capable of. While we are going through the load screens, of course Siegfried is one of the Techno Magic raids, so the same restriction applies that on stage 1 and 2 you can have a maximum of 3 characters per class. On stage 3 and 4 you can have a maximum of 2. And on stage 5 and 6 you can have a maximum of 1 character per class, which means you need 1 from each class to have a full roster here. So that's important to know. Now let's see. This is my team if we get to go to the enter the raid. But let's look at his skills first. So he is an angel type, which means that your mask will not work, and but you can use like non-hero damage stuff. And he does physical damage, so that's important to know because you will be needing to stack a lot of defense against him. Now let's see, his main mechanic I would say is the divine power, which means that upon taking fatal damage he will heal up to full HP, and he will increase his attack and his maximum HP by 30%, and he does this both times he's killed. So he does this twice during the battle, and you need to kill him a third time to actually win, and both times he resurrects, he will increase his attack and his maximum HP, and he cannot reduce this healing effect with any reduced healing skills or anything, so don't even try, it doesn't work on him. Now on top of this, the range of his attacks is also increased each time he resurrects, and this is important because he's mainly an auto attack hero, and the first time he comes back to life he will start hitting your midline characters, and the second time he will reach all the way to the back, so your wizards and priests will be getting hit by his attacks too. So that's important to know because he does a lot of damage with his auto attacks. Now moving on to his skills, the second mechanic I guess he has is distorted down, which means each time he hits you he gains mana, but if the attack is blocked he will lose mana. Now you can also dodge his attacks, and this more or less works. In this case nothing happens, he doesn't gain mana, he doesn't lose mana, but yeah, we will get into the stats, but I don't really recommend using dodge here. Now after and also this skill will destroy all shields, so you get to say goodbye to Fallen Frey and all the good times you had with her, because her shield will be instantly removed. This also works on shields that cannot be dispelled properties, like say Shamilla or Evan, because this is not a dispel, it leaves your buffs intact, it just removes your shields, so you can't keep your shields no matter what you do. Now after stage 4 or higher, Siegfried's normal attacks deal greatly increased damage. That's so nice, you will see why. And he also takes greatly increased damage from normal attacks, so auto attacks, which is kind of weird. Like, I guess they put this in here because they wanted to make Hilda useful somewhere, but even so I'm not quite sure how well she performs. You will need to do a lot of DPS to actually clear Siegfried, so she may or may not work depending on how invested yours is. Now let's see, Divine Rampage. So he's not affected by defense reduction skills and attack speed reduction skills, which is kind of bad because it means ignore defense and penetration will be really good, but you cannot slow his attacks, which would be kind of nice because he really does hit hard at the later stages, especially after his second resurrection. He just becomes a real auto attack monster. On top of this, he receives block chance, 1000 block chance on normal stages, but after stage 4 and above he gets another 1000, so he has 2000 block on him by default, and that really reduces your DPS, so you're gonna need someone who can reduce the block chance that he has. There are some options for this and we will look into it. And sorry, my voice is missing or failing. On top of this, if his mana is fully recharged, his def penetration is increased greatly for 10 seconds, and he can redo this every 10 seconds. So essentially, if you cannot reduce his mana, then he will have great def penetration, and he will just kill you even more faster. But together with the mana block thing, it's not really hard to control his mana. So I would say this isn't really his main skill or the main issue with him. Now he has two active skills. One is Divine Strike. Every 17 seconds he will like jump up and stun everyone in your group. This has a 3-second time on the stun in itself, and it will also reduce your defense, and this is a stacking debuff. Now Vespers tells us that on stage 1 the defense reduction is 2000 defense, and this stacks up. Now in a normal clear you get anywhere between 5 to 7 stacks, so even on stage 1 that would be somewhere between 10 to 14k defense reduced. And if you look at like a maxed out wizard, they have around 17k defense, so that's almost all their defense gone just on stage 1. They don't really tell us how much this debuff goes up on higher stages, but you can expect that your defense will be heavily reduced, and that means that pretty much everyone needs to stack some defense, or you need buffs that will increase your defense. We will look more into this later on. Now, and the final skill, Divine Storm of Blades. This one does... the damage itself is not too high on it, but it will greatly increase your mana every time you get hit by this. And when the skill ends after 20 hits, if you are on full mana, then all your skills will be locked for the next 7 seconds. And during this time, Siegfried will also go into this weakened state. He will stop attacking and like kneel down, and you can do more damage to him. So this will be the DPS burst window. But if your characters hit maximum mana, then they will not be able to do any damage other than with their auto attack. So again, something for auto attack heroes. And now if you are running this on auto, this can get a bit problematic because the game doesn't really tell you when to, or doesn't really cast the skills in a smart way, and yeah, you often get logged just by the game not casting fast enough or not doing what it's supposed to do. Sadly, that's just what you have to deal with. Now, as you can see, all of the damage is physical, so your best friends will be physical block. You need this to block his mana gain anyway, and you will need physical toughness and a lot of physical defense. I would say above stage 4 you will need around 60k pdef, at least almost on everyone. Your DPS characters will need lifesteal, that's very important, so they stay alive, and you very much want to have some physical toughness, and we will look a bit more into this during the run, what you can do to stay alive. So yeah, that's his skills, guys. Now let's move on to show you how my team fares against Siegfried on stage 5. So you can see my team here, featuring Tldr, Gao, Cloudie, Annette, Evan, Xera, and Talisha. Now, I'm using Xera here because she's my most built DPS who can survive Siegfried's damage. I tried also with Seria, and she just got chopped up so fast due to her tier 5 dark. You could try without that, but yeah, without that she is a bit harder to build because she will also need crit chance. But yeah, she might work. I went for a different setup. Now you could see the stunning mechanic there, and he did also the purple debuff, which you can see this is the stacking one. And now he's casting his Divine Storm of Blaze, which you can see my mana is going up on everyone. And Annette and Cloudie managed to avoid getting locked, but Talisha and Evan cannot use any skills during this time. And you can see that Siegfried is like kneeling down and taking more damage here. So normally this would be your chance to be dealing more damage, and then he followed this up right away with his other skill, the stunning and stacking debuff one. So you can see now I have 2 stacks of this one. That's like 4000 defense gone right away. Now on auto it's really hard to avoid getting locked by this skill because the game is just not casting skills in that order. When you are playing manually, what you can do is that when the skill is about to end, you use a high mana skill, and then you will not be on full mana when this skill ends, so you will not get logged. Like you can see that my Evan did this basically right now. and Zeke is coming close to his phase 2, so when he goes down now, he will resurrect and start hitting my midline, and he will start hitting harder, of course. So that's a bit annoying. Also, it's important to know that he dispels all debuffs on him when this happens. So if you happen to be in a bad situation, like with all your skills locked, then you can end up being chopped up right away by how he starts swinging his sword right after he resurrects. So that would be nice if, for instance, they could have made it so that the skill lock disappears when he resurrects too. But yeah, that's just how it is. Definitely the 2 stars of this show are Tldr and Evan. Tldr because after stage 4 he has 2000 block chance, and there aren't that many characters who can reduce that to 0. Tldr has a perk for this, so she can remove it all the way down to 0, so you will be doing a lot more damage. And speaking of damage, on stage 4 he has a total health, so with the 2 resurrections he has a total of 40 billion health. On stage 5 this goes up all the way to 80. So to give you some numbers, you will need anywhere around 300 million DPS for stage 4, and for stage 5 you will need to be on the upper side of 400 to be able to clear this in time. The faster you clear, the better, because the stacking defense reduction debuff is also a sort of soft enrage. As you run out of defense, you will start dying. And you can see that the auto mode can sometimes really not be that reliable. Like my Annette should be casting her S2 there, but she's just casting S1, and she gets very, very close to dying there. That's like a last minute save or last moment save by Evan. And yeah, this can happen. Now I'm running Talisha to be able to meet the DPS check. Her healing really doesn't have so much. It has a 25-second cooldown and a low uptime, so you can't really rely on Talisha to be your healer, sadly, because the uptime on her heal is not that great, and it's a very big front heal, and the tick itself is not so big. So yeah, she does out heal my Annette, but yeah, it's not reliable enough to be able to keep your team alive just with her. So the problem with auto mode and this kind of damage is that you really need your healers, especially, to be casting their skills at the right time for Annette to keep up the CCE immunity. Because while the stunning skill doesn't do too much damage to you, getting stunned during phase 3 and not having any healing, not having lifesteal on your characters, not having your Evan cast skills will essentially get you killed. You can really see that. So yeah, it really depends on auto mode playing well. And one thing that really has helped me here was adding Gao over my Visca. When we go into the gears and perks part, I will talk a bit more about that. But essentially his S2 has like a 16,000 physical defense buff attached to it, and that just helps so much. So yeah, this was stage 5 on auto mode. This team is now fairly stable and my supports aren't that invested, so I think this is pretty good. So now that we are back from the raid, let's have a look at what characters I was using, what gears and perks they were using, and what other characters you might be using instead of them. So let's start with Tldr, my tank. Now she is wearing a bit of a mix of a gear. Her physical defense is not too high, but she has a good amount of physical block, and as you can see, she is running Feather here. Now, interestingly, this is one of the fights where your tank is the least likely to die. I never had an issue with her dying first. The Techno Magic gears is just some increased defense and some increased attack. They are with like total random stats. Funnily, your tank needs to be the least invested in this one. For Tldr, the only important thing is her unique treasure to reduce the block chance to 0, which means this way Siegfried's 2k block becomes 0, and you will be able to do a lot more damage to him. Now alternatively, you could be using Klaus here, who is very good at reducing physical damage done to you, but he doesn't have the block reduction. And the only other character that I can think of right now who can reduce block chance to 0 is Nikki, and her S1's uptime is slightly lower than that of Tldr's S1, Plus, there are good DPS warriors out there and good buffer warriors out there. So using her, plus she's an NPC, so using her is not the most optimal, I would say. If you can, definitely roll with Tldr, because she brings, well, if you are a magic runner or magic user anyway, she brings magic amp, and she reduces the block chance. For physicals, you could go with Clouds, but then you have to consider the block chance from other sources. Moving on, let's check Gao. His gear is actually kind of random a little bit. As you can see, he has a lot of p-dodge, because I was experimenting with this, and it is possible to dodge the attacks of the boss, of Sieg, but I believe that he has some built-in accuracy, because definitely he was hitting me more than like 50 or 60% when I was running that on my Annette and Evan. They were like constantly getting hit without dodging, so I would say the boss definitely must have some accuracy built in. So building heavily for the dodge is not advisable. You do need that 1k-ish block and a good amount of physical depth. Gao is very sturdy, so he doesn't really need too much defensive. You can see he doesn't even have a rune here, so no physical toughness on him. And interestingly, Gao is a very good DPS. When you build him up, I have seen someone clear this using him as the main and single DPS in the raid. So Gao is really useful in this one. Where this comes from is his S2, I believe, which gives you a whooping 16k physical defense, and this is a 15-second uptime for a 12-second cooldown. So basically, it will always be up unless you get interrupted or something. It gives attack, it gives attack speed, and it also has like a Transcendence perk that will give you another extra 200. So basically, if you cannot run Mei, and you are running on stage 5, you are running Evan probably, then you can't have Mei, then you are pretty much substituting the speed you would be getting from her with Gao's S2, which is almost never dropping. So that's really, really helpful. I would say Gao is probably the best character to have from the warriors if you do not have a DPS warrior, and replacing Visca with him just made my run so much better. I got to a much better win rate, even though he's a physical character and I'm running magic. So Gao. Now, if you do not run Gao, of course, there is Nikki with the whole reduction in block chance. Other than that, you would probably want the DPS warrior. Visca didn't really help me that much. I don't think she was worth it in the end. If you have a DPS warrior, if you can make Serio win, she could be really good with her ignore defense. Maybe Bernheim, who also can choose between ignore defense or ignore block. There are Dark Lord Castle, who has very strong auto attacks. There is Hilda, who also has very strong auto attacks and kind of seems to be built for this fight. So ignores block, ignores defense, has strong auto. So when built up, she might be really, really good here. Yeah, but there is also stuff like Dark Lord Castle, maybe even Rebel Klaus with his ignore defense, but he cannot block, so there is that that you just can't make him that sturdy. So if you can make him live, that really helps. If not, then yeah. Let's see. Assassins. Now, I was running my Cloudie, and as you can see, she is not terrible build. That's a 4-star there with like a 0 unique weapon and plus 15. One thing that helped me survive with my characters was either crafting or taking a piece that had some extra block and defense and dodge. And as you can see, I was using using like dodge runes in these, but they didn't really help me too much. So I wouldn't go for that, but yeah, it can help. It's just dodges are very rare. Now, if you do not have a Cloudie can be a very good DPS here. Some others who could be really good here. Cloudie, because of ignore defense and auto attacks. Then there is Ezekiel, who is both ignore defense, auto attack. I assume he is very, very good here. Other options could be like Miriam, Apis, who have both ignore defense mechanics, so that could be good. If you do not have like a DPS assassin, then for support you could take like Nia or maybe Apis, who can perform that. Other assassins don't really have any kind of buffs built into them, so that would make the fight a lot harder. I would say maybe you can take Cloudie. I think he also has some physical amp, but it's not the most. So yeah, it definitely helps if you have a build DPS assassin, especially for these technomagic raids when you go above stage 4, because on stage 5 you need to bring an assassin. Now for the mechanic slot, as a magic user, I think Annette is pretty much a no-brainer. I had to build her with a lot of defense. You can see that's a 111k defense. She has a decent amount of pblock and 1 physical toughness rune, and then she needs some attack speed. Now this was one of the gears that I used for her. One thing you can do actually, if you do not have physical block gear or physical def gear, that you use one of your selectors in the secondary armor slot, because this one you do not need to star up to get the maximum out of it, because you do not need magic defense here. So if you do not have like good physical block pieces, you could craft one of these with a selector with 3 line selectors for like Dark Legion gear, and that would give you like almost all the block you need. You can see that this is actually not maxed out, because it seems I forgot about that. But yeah, her Transcendence perks, it might be worth picking up the reduced cooldown on her emergency treatment, and also the increased uptime on her overcharge. So because she is not too smart on auto mode, and it really does help if you do not get stunned, especially in the last phase where his attack is just so high that if you are stunned for 3 seconds you can easily die in that time frame. Now if you are not a magic user, you could run, of course, Panseron for DPS, or perhaps there is like Lakrak, who can be used as a buffer, and I think he has like mana reduction. Alternatively, maybe Miruru, but yeah, that's like getting close but not quite there. But yeah, Annette definitely. And if you are not a Pansy user, I might consider using Annette even as a physical user. Even though she doesn't do the amp, she has the built-in special bullet, which is a 15% attack reduction, which is always up as long as she keeps hitting the boss, and she gives you a lot of speed and crit, and she gives you CC immunity. So that kind of does help with how the whole fight flows. Now if you do not run Annette, and you do not have a DPS wizard, for instance, because you are a physical player, then you could run Kane, who also brings a lot of CC immunity and defense. But let's look at my Xera real quick. Now, I had to raise her physical defense, because a wizard without a bracelet has like 17k total. She was just dying left and right, even with like 7 mil health. So I had to use a bracelet on her. She doesn't have any defensive stats, and that might be something that you want to change if you cannot survive. You could replace one of her runes with like toughness, or maybe 2 of them. Now the most important perk for me was like, of course, depth penetration and her darkness awakened, so for S4 light. The rest is up to you. I picked some attack improvement. I tried to roll with circuit burst, but she just takes so much damage because she's a squishy wizard that it's really hard to do to stay alive with her, even wearing a bracelet and having Evan and having Gao. Even then she will still sometimes just get cleaved by the boss. And of course it really does help if you have some lifesteal, so all her attacks heal her back up. Now if you do not have a build Sarah but you want to use her, one other option is using her UT2 build, which means that for the duration of her skill 2, all targets, or the target, will take 20% reduced damage, because with her UT2 this is applied to everyone in your raid. So if you do not have a good wizard and you need the support, then you can take Sarah with that, build her full tanky, so she doesn't need to bring any DPS stats. Then she's just there to spam that defense ability on you so you do not die. Other than her and Kane, well, any DPS wizard could do. You could try Lucia, you could try Aisha maybe. I don't think Esker does, because he just takes too long to ramp up without skill resets. But yeah, these would be my options. I think that who can do this. Due to the very fast attack pattern of the boss, wizards have a real bad time here, because they can be caught in a cast and die within that cast. So, and due to their low defense, it's really hard to make them both sturdy enough and DPS enough to be able to perform here. So if you are not a wizard main, then you are gonna have a good time here. If you are a wizard main, then yeah, it's gonna be a bad time. Now let's see Talisha. Normally I wouldn't recommend using her because she's very squish, even with like 8 mil health and the book on her. She was dying a lot on me. Now she has some block again from this piece. I found this lying around. It's actually enchanted but not maxed out. This gives her a bit of block and a bit of dodge, which should help her to stay alive, and that's kind of important. For perks, I chose... Now this one is an interesting perk because at the beginning sometimes you get hit so fast that he kills your front line, especially like squishy assassins, so this helps. You may choose to use this or not. Otherwise, this one is also a very good perk to have on an archer because it increases the depth penetration on everyone, and that increases your DPS unless you are running someone who has ignored defense. Now, other than her, very good options for a support archer would be Rakina, who has mana reduction, who has attack reduction, and is generally just really good as a supporter, mainly for physical teams, but you can run her in a magic team too. Now, for DPS, if you have a Celine is like a monster here. She can push out so good DPS, like I have seen 700 plus reported by friends and such, and that's just really, really awesome because of her auto attack, ignore defense kind of things. Celine is just really, really good here. So if you have a build Celine, you kind of have the DPS part covered all the way up to 5. She can be the solo DPS easily. For magic users, Talisha is kind of lacking on the DPS, I felt. I've tried various setups, not necessarily just this one, but on auto she doesn't play too smart, and there are no multi-stages to buff her S1 red. Maybe Dimmel could be used, because he also has like ignore defense auto attack, so he might get a use there. I haven't tested because mine is not built at all. If any of you have, I would love to know. I think he might be good here, depending on how high his damage can scale, but he kind of has the abilities that would work here. So to recap, Talisha, Rakina, Celine, and perhaps Dimmel would be the best choices for Archer, I believe. And finally, we are moving to Priests. Now, for Priest, Evan, I believe, is the best. I got mine, as you can see, he is a 0-star unique weapon, 2-star unique treasure with a base soul weapon. I got him up to 80k physical defense, and this is kind of important. I think on stage 4 you can get by with like 60k, but on stage 5 you need to go higher, at least 70, but better to 80, 100. On all your supports who are not healing back with lifesteal because they will be hit so hard. Now his gear is a bit lackluster. He is still wearing some of these old stuff. As you can see, this was also one of those low invest items. He has a good chunk of physical block, 2 runes with physical toughness, and he's using a pocket watch, so he casts his skill faster. He doesn't go on cooldown that much. This really helps him. If I had TM gear with cooldown reduction, I would put that on him too. Now the main perks for him, you do need some mana control, but for me, Xera alone does that. Xera and block can control his mana, so you do not need the perk from Evan. If you do not run Xera, then Rakina can do it too, or well, anyone else you have who has mana reduction. You will need someone with active reduction, so if you run Evan, you might want to pick up this perk, but it's not required if you have one more character who does mana reduction. In my case, this was Sarah. Now I picked the extra healing or the reduced cooldown from this skill because it really does help. You need him to be healing as much as you can. And I picked this because it gives CC resistance to you when his magic circle, his S2 is up. And that's really helpful because you can resist the CC of the knockdown effect of his Siegfried skill. And not being knocked down is really helpful in stage 3. Other than that, you can also use his tier 5 dark, which increases your attacks by quite a nice amount. And if you can star up his unique weapon, that will give you more and more physical damage reduction, so you will become tankier as your Evan gets stronger, and that's really good because your whole team just gets stronger. And also Evan becomes a better healer. His skills will top you up more easily, so that really does help. In lower stages, I would consider using Mei. I have been running Evan and Mei together on stage 4 because she has like a heal over time with a low cooldown, and she gives very good buffs, so she could be really good. Perhaps Raffi with her S1 could be good because that has a pretty good uptime and constant healing, but he doesn't really bring any buffs to the party, so maybe not because of that. And Lucius could be useful, especially for physical teams. He could also do the mana drain part, I believe, but for Lucius to function, you kinda need cooldown reduction on him, because without that he won't be able to keep casting his skills. So you would need a very invested Lucius to be able to do this. With an Evan, as you can see, mine is not heavily invested. He has Transcendence perks and decent gear, but that's a very low investment Evan there altogether. So yeah, this is the Siegfried fight, guys. I hope you found this guide helpful. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. And until the next time, this has been Cloudie. See you next time.